The emergency beacon's crimson pulse painted shadows across Marcus Vale's face. As his research vessel spiraled through Aetherius's amber atmosphere, he gripped the manual controls, fighting against the planet's unusual gravitational anomalies that had knocked out his automated systems. Through the viewport, he caught glimpses of floating crystalline formations and bioluminescent clouds, before his ship carved a smoking furrow through what appeared to be a field of singing flowers. When the dust settled and Marcus stumbled from his damaged vessel, the first thing he noticed was the silence, not the absence of sound, but a deliberate quiet, as if the entire landscape held its breath. The second thing he noticed was the woman standing at the edge of the impact crater, her skin shimmering with opalescent patterns that shifted like oil on water. "You should not have come here, human," she said in accented but clear Standard Galactic. Her violet eyes held a mixture of concern and irritation. "This world is not for your kind." Marcus activated his universal translator earpiece, though her words had been clear enough. "I'm a xenobiologist with the Galactic Research Initiative. My permits are in order, and I filed all the proper. Your permits mean nothing to the Void Whisper." She interrupted, her luminescent patterns flickering, with what he would later learn was exasperation. "It has destroyed entire armadas, brought down empires that span systems. What makes you think your fragile human form will fare any better?" Before Marcus could respond, more Aetherians emerged from the settlement beyond the field. Their leader, an elderly male whose skin patterns moved in slow, dignified waves, approached with measured steps. "Nissa, bring the off-worlder to the settlement. The sun sets soon, and the darkness brings hunting." Nissa, the name suited her. Marcus thought gestured impatiently for him to follow. As they walked, Marcus couldn't help but notice the way her movements seemed to flow like water, each step a small dance. The settlement itself defied his expectations, organic structures that seemed grown, rather than built, connected by bridges of living crystal that hummed with harmonic frequencies. "I'm Marcus," he offered as they walked. "Marcus Vale. And you're Nissa, Nissa Moondancer." She replied without looking at him, "Translator for our people. Though I wonder why I bother when off-worlders never listen to our warnings." The settlement's inhabitants watched their passage with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Their skin patterns created a visual symphony of communication that Marcus found fascinating. He made mental notes about their bioluminescent properties, the way emotional states seemed to manifest as different wavelengths of light. Krell Darkwater, as the elder introduced himself, led them to a central pavilion where holographic records floated like ghostly memories. With a gesture, he summoned an image that made Marcus's breath catch. The creature depicted was unlike anything in his xenobiology database, as a massive entity of living shadow and starlight, with appendages that seemed to phase between dimensions. "The Void Whisper," Krell intoned solemnly, "for 1,000 years. It has been the death of empires. The Zathri Confederation sent their greatest warriors, all returned as scattered atoms. The Mechri Collective brought machines of war. The Void Whisper sang them into rust. Even the psychic lords of the Eternal Dynasty could not bend its will." Marcus studied the image intently, his scientific mind racing. Fascinating. A creature that exists partially in subspace. If these readings are accurate, the defensive capabilities alone would make it practically invulnerable to conventional weapons. "You speak of it like a specimen to be studied," Nissa said sharply. "The Void Whisper is not some animal to be catalogued. It is the judgment of the cosmos itself." "Everything can be understood," Marcus replied, meeting her gaze. "Fear comes from ignorance. Knowledge brings comprehension." Nissa's patterns flared with indignation. "Arrogance. You humans think the universe exists to be dissected and labeled. Some mysteries are meant to remain mysteries." "If that were true," Marcus countered gently, "we would still be cowering in caves, afraid of fire." Their philosophical debate was interrupted by a sound that seemed to come from everywhere, and nowhere a harmonious wail that made the settlement's crystal structures resonate in sympathy. Every Aetherian immediately dimmed their bioluminescence, some pressing themselves flat against walls. "It hunts," Krell whispered. "Quickly, to the shelters." As the Aetherians scattered, Marcus remained rooted in place, staring at the darkening sky. Something about that sound called to him, not with fear but with inexplicable recognition. Nissa grabbed his arm, her touch sending unexpected warmth through him. Are you completely mad? Come, she pulled him toward a reinforced structure, her patterns cycling through what he recognized as genuine fear. Inside the shelter, pressed among frightened Etherians whose muted glows created a constellation of anxiety, Marcus found himself acutely aware of Nissa beside him. Her hands still gripped his arm, and he could feel her trembling slightly. Tell me about it, he whispered. The void whisper, not the legends, but what you actually know. She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. Why do you not fear it as the others do? Marcus considered the question. Because fear clouds observation, and because he paused, unsure how to explain the strange sensation that had filled him when he heard the creature's call. Because I think it's lonely. Nissa's patterns shifted to something he couldn't interpret. Lonely, it destroys. Civilizations, maybe. Marcus said quietly, it's just been trying to communicate, and no one has known how to listen. 3 days passed in the settlement, and Marcus Vale found himself growing increasingly restless. He'd repaired what he could of his ship's communication array, sent a brief message to the research initiative about his safe landing, and spent hours studying the Etherians' historical records about the Void Whisper. But theoretical knowledge wasn't enough. Not when the greatest xenobiological discovery of the century prowled just beyond the settlement's borders on the third night, as Aetherius's twin moons cast silver shadows through his guest quarters. Marcus made his decision. He gathered his portable scanning equipment, activated his biosuit's adaptive camouflage, and slipped from the settlement like a ghost. The forbidden zone began where the singing flowers ended, marked by crystalline pillars that hummed warnings in subsonic frequencies. Marcus paused at the boundary, his instruments detecting massive energy fluctuations ahead. The landscape beyond looked different, twisted, beautiful, and wrong in ways that made his eyes struggle to process the geometry. I knew you would do something stupidly heroic, a voice said behind him. Marcus spun to find Nissa emerging from the shadows. Her skin patterns, cycling through what he'd learned, indicated deep frustration. She wore form-fitting armor that accentuated her lithe frame, and carried a staff that pulsed with contained energy. How did you follow the only human on Aetherios who glows with curiosity? Like a beacon, she moved closer, and Marcus caught the scent of something like jasmine mixed with ozone. Your emotional resonance is remarkably loud. We can sense you from across the settlement. Then you know I have to do this, Marcus said. I'm not here to destroy or conquer. I just want to understand. Nissa's patterns shifted, softer now. Understanding. The Void Whisper is like trying to understand the void between stars. It will consume you. Maybe, Marcus admitted, then smiled. Or maybe everyone's been trying to understand it the wrong way. Come with me. Absolutely not. Then you'll have to stop me. He took a step backward, across the boundary. Nissa's eyes widened, her patterns flaring with alarm. For a moment, they stood on opposite sides of an invisible line, safety and danger, known and unknown. Then, with a sound that might have been a curse in her native language, she stepped across to join him. When we die horribly, I want my last words to be I told you so, she muttered. They moved deeper into the twisted landscape, where reality seemed negotiable. Floating rocks defied gravity, and patches of ground showed reflections of different skies. Marcus's instruments went wild, detecting particles that shouldn't exist and energy signatures that violated several laws of physics. The Void Whispers. Presence distorts spacetime, Nissa explained, staying close enough that their arms occasionally brushed. It exists partially in dimensions we can't perceive. That's why weapons don't work. How do you fight something that isn't entirely here? Marcus paused, struck by a thought. What if that's the point? What if it's not from our dimensional plane at all? What if it's trapped here, trying to find its way home? Before Nissa could respond, the temperature plummeted. The air itself seemed to crystallize, and then the Void Whisper emerged from a fold in space that hadn't existed seconds before. Marcus's first impression was of impossible beauty. The creature moved like liquid starlight, its form constantly shifting between states of matter. Eyes that weren't eyes in any conventional sense regarded them with an intelligence vast and alien. When it moved, it left trails of aurora in the Nissa raised her staff, energy gathering at its tip, but Marcus gently pushed it down. "Wait," he whispered. The void whisper circled them slowly, and Marcus felt pressure in his mind, not painful, but insistent, like a song being played in frequencies just beyond human hearing. He closed his eyes, trying to focus on the sensation. "What are you doing?" Nissa hissed, her hand finding his in the darkness. "Listening," Marcus breathed. The pressure increased, and suddenly Marcus understood. The void whisper wasn't attacking, it was trying to communicate. Each civilization it had encountered had met it with violence or fear, never realizing it was desperately attempting to make contact. Without thinking, Marcus began to hum a simple melody from Earth, something his mother had sung to him as a child. The void whisper froze, its constant movement stilling for the first time in recorded history. Then, impossibly, it hummed back, not the same melody, but a harmonic complement to it. The sound reverberated through Marcus's bones, through the twisted space around them, creating patterns of light that danced in the air. Nissa gasped, her grip on his hand tightening. "It's singing," she whispered, wonder replacing fear in her voice. Marcus opened his eyes to find the void whisper had moved closer, close enough that he could see his reflection in its shifting surface, except the reflection showed him surrounded by stars he'd never seen, in a space that wasn't space. Slowly, carefully, Marcus raised his free hand. The void whisper extended something that might have been an appendage, and they touched. The universe exploded into symphony. Marcus found himself experiencing memories that weren't his vast migrations through dimensional barriers, a species that existed as living music, accidentally torn from their reality and trapped in this one. The void whisper wasn't a destroyer by choice. It was a lost traveler whose very presence destabilized the reality around it. When the connection broke, Marcus staggered. Nissa caught him, her arms surprisingly strong. "Marcus, are you all right?" Your eyes, they were glowing. He looked up at her, seeing her anew. Her patterns now included frequencies he hadn't been able to perceive before, creating a halo of impossible beauty around her. "I understand now," he said softly. "It's been trying to go home for so long, it forgot why it wanted to leave." The void whisper retreated slightly, but didn't vanish. Instead, it settled into a more stable form, watching them with what Marcus could only interpret as hope. "We need to help it," Marcus said. Still leaning against Nissa. She studied his face, her patterns shifting through emotions he was beginning to recognize: concern, admiration, and something warmer he didn't dare name yet. "You're either the bravest human I've ever met, or the most foolish. Can't I be both?" he asked with a weak smile. She laughed, a sound like silver bells that made the void whisper trill in response. "Perhaps you already are." The morning after their encounter with the void whisper, Marcus found himself in Nissa's private laboratory, a crystalline chamber, where she studied off-world languages and communication patterns. Her equipment was fascinating, combining Etherian biotechnology with adapted galactic standard interfaces. "Your neural patterns," Nissa said, projecting a holographic scan of his brain, "they've been altered. Look here, new pathways forming in your temporal lobe, specifically in areas associated with pattern recognition and harmonic processing." Marcus leaned closer, their shoulders touching as they studied the data. "The void whisper didn't just communicate with me. It gave me the ability to understand its language, bioharmonic resonance expressed through dimensio. No frequencies. That's impossible," Nissa breathed, but her tone suggested wonder rather than disbelief. "No species has successfully achieved true xenolinguistic integration without technological assistance. Maybe because they were trying to dominate rather than understand," Marcus suggested. He turned to face her, suddenly aware of how close they were. "Nissa, this changes everything. If we can establish real communication." An explosion in the distance cut him off. Through the laboratory's transparent walls, they saw a sleek gunmetal ship descending toward the settlement's outskirts, bearing the aggressive lines of corporate design. "No," Nissa whispered, her patterns flashing alarm. They swore they wouldn't return. They rushed outside to find Krell already gathering the settlement's defenders. The ship had landed just beyond the singing flowers, and a team in environmental suits was establishing a perimeter with military precision. Nexus Mining Corporation, Krell said grimly. They came 5 years ago, wanting to harvest our crystal formations. We refused. They left, but promised to return with proper authorization. A man emerged from the ship, his suit more elaborate than the others, marked with corporate insignia. Even through his helmet's visor, Marcus could see calculating eyes that valued everything. In terms of profit margins, Jackson Rivers, the man announced through his suit's amplifier. Senior Acquisition Scout, Nexus Mining. We're here under Galactic Commercial Code 779. This planet's unique crystalline structures have been classified as critical industrial resources. You have 48 hours to negotiate relocation terms. This is our home. Krell responded with dignity. We will not leave. Rivers shrugged. That's unfortunate. Our geological surveys indicate the largest crystal deposits are directly beneath your settlement, and our bioscanners have detected the dimensional anomaly you call the Void Whisper. The Science Division will pay handsomely for that specimen, dead or alive. Marcus stepped forward. I'm with the Galactic Research Initiative. This planet and its inhabitants are under protective study protocols. Rivers smirked. Marcus Vale. Yes, we know about you. Your little organization doesn't have the authority to override commercial interests. Besides, his smile turned predatory. We've brought equipment specifically designed to handle dimensional entities. The Void Whisper's reign of terror ends now. As if summoned by its name, a haunting melody drifted from the twisted lands beyond. But this time, it was different, multiple voices creating a complex harmony. Marcus's enhanced perception picked up nuances he wouldn't have noticed before. Oh no, he breathed. There's more than one. Nissa gripped his arm. What do you mean? The song, it's a family unit. The Void Whisper has offspring. Rivers' team immediately went on alert, weapons powering up with ominous hums. Even better, Rivers said. Breeding specimens will triple our profit. That night, while Rivers' team set up their base camp, Marcus and Nissa slipped back into the Forbidden Zone. The Void Whisper was waiting for them, but now Marcus could see what he'd missed before. 3 smaller forms that darted between dimensions, like cosmic dolphins at play. They're beautiful, Nissa whispered, her natural luminescence unconsciously sensing with their dimensional shifts. Marcus reached out with his new awareness, humming the greeting pattern he'd learned. The Void Whisper responded, and with it came understanding. The creatures were teaching their young to navigate dimensional space, preparing them for an eventual journey home. But the corporate presence had agitated them. They could sense the hostile intent, the weapons designed to trap beings like them. They're terrified, Marcus said. They know what Nexus represents, how many of their kind have been captured and experimented on across the galaxy. Nissa moved closer to him, their hands naturally finding each other. What can we do? Rivers has legal documents, weapons, the backing of corporate power. Marcus watched the young Void Whispers play, their forms creating impossible geometries in the air. One of them approached cautiously, drawn perhaps by Nissa's sympathetic glow. She gasped as it brushed against her hand, and for a moment, her patterns took on properties of dimensional shift. Did you feel that? She asked, eyes wide with wonder. The same gift it gave me, Marcus confirmed. The ability to perceive their language, their reality. Nissa, don't you see? This is the answer. Not fighting them, not capturing them, joining them in understanding. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Marcus felt his heart skip. Her patterns had shifted to something he'd only seen hints of before, a warm, golden pulse that seemed to reach out to his own biorhythms. You're proposing we teach the entire settlement to communicate with them. Why not? Your people already use bioluminescent communication. You're naturally suited to understanding harmonic languages. And if everyone can speak with the Void Whispers, Rivers can't claim they're just animals to be harvested. Nissa finished, her eyes bright with possibility. She smiled, and it was like watching a star being born. Marcus Vale, you impossible, brilliant human. Before he could respond, she kissed him, a brief, electric contact that sent their respective bio-patterns into chaotic spirals of color and light. The young Void Whispers trilled in what sounded suspiciously like laughter. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Nissa's patterns had settled into a steady pulse that matched his own heartbeat. We have work to do, she said softly. Marcus nodded. Still dazed, right? Save the settlement. Protect interdimensional beings. Stop corporate exploitation. He smiled. Just another Tuesday. She laughed and took his hand again. Come, let's go make the impossible possible. Behind them, the Void Whisper family sang their approval, their forms dancing between realities like living auroras. For the first time in millennia, they had found beings who wanted to understand rather than control, and in the connection between human and Etherian, between different forms of consciousness, hope bloomed like a flower in the void. Dawn came too quickly, bringing with it the hum of industrial equipment. Marcus woke in the settlement's guest quarters to find Nissa curled against him, her bioluminescent patterns gently pulsing in sleep rhythm. They'd spent the night teaching volunteers the basics of dimensional harmonics, and exhaustion had eventually claimed them both. He studied her face in the soft morning light, marveling at how natural this felt, as if they'd been meant to find each other across the vast distances between their worlds. When her eyes fluttered open, meeting his, her patterns shifted to that warm golden frequency he'd come to associate with her affection. "Good morning," she whispered, then seemed to realize their position and blushed a fascinating cascade of pearl and rose across her skin. "Morning," he replied, reluctant to move. "Nissa." An explosion shook the settlement. They scrambled apart, rushing to the window to see Nexus Mining's equipment carving into the sacred crystal formations. At the settlement's edge, but worse, a massive containment unit was being assembled, clearly designed to hold something large and interdimensional. "They're not waiting for negotiations," Nissa said. Quickly pulling on her tunic, they found Krell in the central pavilion, addressing a crowd of frightened Etherians. Beside him stood a human woman Marcus hadn't seen before, older, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of smile that had signed death warrants for entire ecosystems. Director Helena Cross. She introduced herself as Marcus and Nissa arrived. "I've come to personally oversee this acquisition. Mr. Rivers informed me we have a situation with native interference. The situation," Marcus said firmly, "is that you're violating 17 different protective protocols and threatening sentient beings." Cross's smile never wavered. "Sentient, my dear boy, the Void Whispers are energy phenomena. Fascinating ones, certainly, but no more sentient than a solar flare." "Then you won't mind if I show you this," Marcus said. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his new awareness. The response was immediate. The adult Void Whisper materialized in the pavilion, its younglings playfully orbiting around it. The Etherians who'd learned the harmonic language began to hum, creating a welcoming chorus. The Void Whispers responded, their forms stabilizing into something almost solid. One of the younglings approached Director Cross, chittering curiously. Cross stepped back, her composure cracking. "Impossible. They're supposed to be hostile." "They're hostile to those who come with hostile intent," Nissa said, moving to stand beside Marcus. Their hands found each other naturally, and the Void Whisper matriarch trilled approvingly. "Touching," Cross said, recovering her corporate mask, "but ultimately irrelevant. Nexus has invested too much in this expedition. We have equipment specifically designed to contain dimensional entities. Observe." She activated a device on her wrist. Instantly, the Void Whispers shrieked in pain, their forms flickering wildly. The younglings tried to phase out, but found themselves trapped, pulled toward the containment unit by an inexorable force. "Stop," Marcus shouted. But Cross ignored him. "Dimensional anchors," she explained clinically. "They prevent phase shifting by locking onto the unique quantum signature of these creatures. We'll have them contained within the hour." The adult Void Whisper's song turned desperate, reaching out to Marcus with psychic force that made his enhanced awareness burn. Images flooded his mind, not just of capture, but of experimentation, dissection. Younglings separated from parents and dying in sterile laboratories across the galaxy. "No," Marcus growled, and something fundamental shifted inside him. The harmonic gift the Void Whisper had given him suddenly expanded, fueled by his emotional connection to both the creatures and to Nissa. He felt her presence beside him, her own newly awakened abilities resonating with his. Together, their combined awareness reached out to every Etherian who'd learned the language. "Sing," Marcus commanded, his voice carrying harmonics that bypassed normal hearing. "All of you sing." The settlement erupted in sound, not chaotic, but a perfectly coordinated symphony of bioluminescent beings and human consciousness united in purpose. The Void Whisper's pain eased as the collective harmony disrupted the dimensional anchors, but Cross was already barking orders. Increase power, full containment protocols. The equipment whined dangerously, pouring more energy into the anchors. The youngest Void Whisper began to fade, its form unraveling under the strain. "No," Nissa cried out, her patterns flaring brilliant white. She pulled Marcus closer, their foreheads touching, together, like in the cave, but more. Marcus understood instantly. They opened themselves completely to each other, not just minds, but souls touching across the bridge of their joined hands. The connection blazed through them, amplified by their feelings for each other. And suddenly, they were more than the sum of their parts. Their combined consciousness reached out to the Void Whisper matriarch, offering not just communication, but true fusion. The creature accepted, and for one impossible moment, 3 species became one: human creativity, Etherian harmony, and Void Whisper dimensional mastery. Reality rippled. The containment equipment didn't just fail, it ceased to exist. Its component atoms scattered across 17 dimensions. The anchors dissolved like morning mist. Cross's confident smile finally disappeared entirely as she realized her powerful technology had been rendered obsolete by something far older and more fundamental than corporate greed. "How?" she whispered. Marcus and Nissa slowly separated, both swaying from the effort, but their eyes remained locked, seeing each other with new clarity. In sharing consciousness so completely, they'd seen into each other's hearts, past every barrier and pretense. "Love," Marcus said simply, his voice hoarse. "The universal frequency that transcends dimensions." Nissa's patterns pulsed with that golden warmth, but now Marcus could read the full meaning: not just affection, but complete, unconditional love. The same thing he knew was written in every cell of his being. Cross looked between them, then at the Void Whispers who now surrounded her team with decidedly protective postures. "This isn't over. Nexus has contracts, legal rights, and I have about 600 hours of recorded evidence of you attempting to capture and torture sentient beings," Marcus interrupted, "plus documentation of illegal dimensional manipulation technology. I think the Galactic Council will be very interested." For the first time, real fear flickered in Cross's eyes. "You're bluffing," Marcus smiled, pulling Nissa closer. "Try me. I've got nothing left to lose. I've already found everything I want to keep." The Void Whisper matriarch moved between Cross and the couple, its form now radiating calm menace. The message was clear: these beings were under protection. "Pack up," Cross ordered her team tersely. "We're leaving." As the Nexus forces retreated, Nissa turned in Marcus's arms, her hands framing his face. "You meant it. Everything you felt in the connection. Every atom of it," Marcus confirmed. "I came here looking for new life, and I found so much more. I found you." She kissed him then, deep and sure, while around them the Void Whispers sang approval and the Etherians cheered. In that moment, wrapped in each other while standing between worlds, they were home.